In this exploration, we'll be looking at the equation of worth. So, as with any duality, we have the one, we have the paradigm of worth, and then we filter it through duality. So now we have worth and the absence of worth. So we create worthless. And the equation is simple. Worth is a function of being. It's a function of presence. It's a function of the empathic and to some extent the transcendent brain. So the empathic brain is the language of empathy, the language of response. So it works like this. You're over here, and I'm over here. And in an empathic paradigm, if something comes towards you that's scary or harmful or painful, if an energy field intersects with your reality, and you respond, in a human interaction, meaning between two bodies that are functioning primarily from the empathic brain, there is an empathic communication that goes on between these two. And there is a response, right? And what that response acknowledges is that you matter to me. Now, the sociopathic protocol is, of course, the opposite. This is the reptilian brain, where if you do matter to me, it is because I can exploit you, I can use you. Otherwise, you do not matter to me. So the reptilian brain creates a partition which denies the worth of the empathic brain. So, and we'll do this over on this side because white stands out even easier over here. So between two human beings, there's a continuum of responsiveness. So up here we have, very high levels of response. Down here we have no response, no reaction. I scream and no one responds. I cry out and no one responds. Now, what that lack of response is communicating is worthlessness. It's saying that there is a boundary between us and that whatever is on the other side of that boundary has no value. Because if I'm threatened, if I have some pain personally, I always respond. But if it's on the other side of the divide, I'm saying that you're separate. And I'm also saying that you are not worth the expenditure of energy to acknowledge, to support, to go and get help for, etc., etc. Now, cults of individuality are more focused on their boundary. One of the most common refrains in American culture is, "That's not my problem. That which affects you does not affect me. So I will not only spend no energy responding to it, I will spend energy to remind you of the boundary. That is not connected with me, it is connected with you, and you are not connected with me. Have we got that straight? Okay, now you deal with it. I'm not going to deal with it. You deal with it. Because that is your problem. Meaning that pain that you're experiencing has nothing to do with me. And so I'm going to pretend as if it doesn't exist. And if you're in pain, I'm going to pretend that you do not exist. And the pretense that you do not matter, the pretense that you do not exist, or if you exist, it is solely to exploit. It is solely to use in order to extract more value from me. If I can use you for my orgasm, if I can use you to look good, if I can use you to extract money that I can use for something else, if I can use you to feel good in the moment, if I need something and you're willing to respond, then you have value. If you do not have value to me, you have no value. In other words, it's all about me. This is the narcissistic bubble. It's all about me. It was always about me. And you are only relevant to the extent that you are expedient in responding to me. And you are not relevant to the extent that you are not expedient in responding to me, because you never mattered anyway. It's all about me. Your existence, to the extent that it matters at all, only matters if and when you can be useful to me. And if you cannot be useful to me, if and when you are not useful to me, then I do not acknowledge you, I do not support you, I do not respond to you in any way other than to perhaps communicate my disgust, how little you matter. So this is the language of worth and worthlessness. It is the language of empathy or sociopathic. So we have continuums, worth and worthlessness, empathy and sociopathic, responsiveness and dissociation, caring versus disgust, understanding versus judgment, right? So these are the five continuums that are projecting my belief, my paradigm of whether you have any value as a being, as a person, or if you have none. I will not respond to you. I will not prioritize you. I will not have feelings based on the feelings that you have. I will judge you and will not understand you. And I will maintain boundaries except where you can be useful to me. Now, every one of these things, so we're dealing with reptilian the painful side, the dissociative, the worthless side of this is we're all dealing with the reptilian brain. Fight, flight, freeze, or negotiate. Fight, flight, freeze, or negotiate. Now, every cult has a continuum of competence. meaning we know how to do certain things and we do not know how to do certain things. That's the continuum of competence. Now, the continuum of competence correlates with the continuum of scarcity or abundance, meaning every life form has needs. Every human being has a need to survive, to feel secure in that survival, to earn and develop self-esteem, to discover and develop their talents and abilities, to bring those meaningfully into the world and create abundance, and to become part of something greater than ourselves, to transcend the dissociated, sociopathic, reptilian brain, and become a part of something bigger, to become one with something that's more. That has been, and will always be the need in a hierarchical structure. Meaning if you're dealing with survival, you don't need to feel a part of something bigger, except where it helps your survival. If you're dealing with security, self-esteem, if you're not sure whether you're going to survive as a consciousness, as a body, telling the truth to criminals hunting and trying to kill you is generally not your highest priority. Your priority is to feel more secure in that survival. So there's a hierarchy. Once you've survived and are secure in that survival, then you start forming ideals, like who do I want to become? And then you start measuring yourself with those ideals. I did a good job there. I fucked up there. That was terrible there. But I aspire to be someone that I admire, that I see as beautiful, true, good in some way. And so I have my principles, my path, and I'm moving towards that. When I make good headway, I feel great, right? I feel that, I nailed it, right? I managed to tell the truth. I didn't hurt people's feelings unnecessarily. I was able to say the things that were important for me to say. I feel more understood. I'm not being pushed around as much anymore. I established, I'm not going to be used continually. So these are the continuums of human need. Now, these are needs. They're not preferences. And so if you're not meeting your needs, it's not because you don't need them. It's not because you don't want to meet your needs. It's because you don't know how. And so scarcity is relevant to what's needed to be fulfilled, to reach one's full potential. It is life's nature to seek to reach its full potential. Every life form is instinctively or consciously or statistically oriented towards reaching its full potential. A flower wants to grow, wants to produce flowers, wants to produce seeds within those flowers, wants those seeds to find fertile ground, and wants to continue. If given the chance, the flower will do that. So the only reason that a flower dies out is it doesn't have the chance to reach its full potential. It is the nature of life to reach its full potential, and we are part of life. It is our nature to pursue our perfection, to pursue the ideal experience, the ideal life, the ideal relationship, the ideal design of a life, the ideal job, the ideal financial situation, the ideal sexual partner and relationship. It's life, meaning you can depend on any healthy, normal life form to seek its potential. You can depend on human nature to want to become more than it is. And to the extent that those patterns are, shifted or influenced by cultural memes, by family memes, etc., you still have that drive. For example, the victim, the chronic victim, aspires to be the bully because in the power dominance, meaning when people are reduced to animals, it's a dominance hierarchy. And in a dominance hierarchy, there's the desire to climb the dominance hierarchy. There's the desire to. Meaning if someone has the chance to climb the dominance hierarchy and they're in the reptilian brain, they will do so. If they don't have the chance, then they will ass lick and run and freeze and hide from the sociopaths at the top of the dominance hierarchy. So competence correlates with abundance of what? Of the path, of the speed, of the resources needed to reach our full potential. Because if we are highly competent, we understand what our needs are, we understand what our potential is, and we are successful at reaching it. So scarcity is the phenomena of incompetence. Now, scarcity creates pain. So we're breathing right now, we have an abundance, it's fine, we're competent to breathe. Our heart is doing this, our lungs is doing this, but we can't breathe. We lack the competency to create air, to create the flow of breath. We start to feel bad because it's the nature of life to grow and expand. It's the nature of life to become more, but we're in jeopardy of becoming more if we do not find access to oxygen in a matter of 20 minutes or less. We will die. And so there is pain around the perceived gap. We want to reach our full potential, and the oxygen deprivation, the scarcity in the oxygen is saying, we're not going to do it. I want to become all that I can be. I want to live. I want to continue to live, but I can't do it. And so fear comes up. Fear of pain. All fear is fear of pain. All pain is the gap between reaching our full potential and where we are. I can never reach my full potential, says the depressed person, says the person in pain. I can't do it. I can't confront my father and become an adult. I can't move on. I can't live. I can't heal this wound. I can't face this feeling. I can't. So I feel pain. I want to move through. I want to transcend my blockages. I want to become all that I can be, but I can't. I'm afraid of the pain of the process, of getting over it. I'm afraid that in my effort to escape harm, I'll become visible and I'll be shot down. I'm afraid that I will encounter a force bigger than myself and I will be beaten into submission. I can't do it. And I feel fear. I feel trapped. I feel lonely. I feel bad because I'm in pain. Because there's scarcity. I want abundance, an abundance of sex, an abundance of joy, an abundance of money, an abundance of praise, an abundance of talent, an abundance of courage, an abundance of joy, an abundance of mastery. I want an abundance of resources to fulfill my full potential. But I lack the competence to create that abundance, as evidenced by the fact that I haven't, right? as evidenced by the fact that I haven't. Now, we're looking at things like worth, and it's important to understand that sanity, integrity, consistency is a need, right? So we not only want to create abundance, we want to do so consistent with our beliefs. We want integrity with our beliefs. So we have some of these tensions, for example, of if I believe that I'm not worth it, if I believe that I'm worth less, then if I create massive amounts of abundance, I'm crazy, meaning my reality is not conforming to my beliefs. I believe that I don't deserve it. I believe that I'm not worth it. I believe that I will be punished for succeeding, for doing more than I should, quote unquote. I believe that, but I've just created it anyway. This is a dissonance, right? And so what we tend to do is destroy the things that diverge too much from our beliefs so that we don't feel crazy. We instead feel shame. We feel sane by failing, right? Because if I'm not worth it and I don't deserve it and I will be punished for doing more than I deserve, for getting more than I deserve, for having more than I deserve, then, shame, depression, hopelessness, despair, those are more consistent with that set of beliefs and paradigm, those self-images. And so I will, there's a strong tendency towards sanity. So we have to do one or the other, We either have to lift the belief and the image and say, no, look, I have this, therefore I am worth it, right? So then we pivot it, right? Rather than collapse it down, we say that I have this, therefore I must deserve this, therefore this is who I am, and this is my new self-image. And so we've got consistency. We're sane now. The words, the thoughts, the beliefs, the paradigms are saying this, and the reality is saying this. The pull to sanity, the pull to integrity, integration of heart, mind, and body is so strong that if we cannot sustain this, meaning if the reality is going down here, the reality is failure, the reality is scarcity, the reality is trauma, the reality is shock, the reality is surprise. I can't do anything about this. I don't know what I'm doing with. But the belief is I'm worthy, I deserve it, I'm wonderful. The gap between the inner world and the outer world, between the thoughts and the feelings and the reality, at some point, if they get big and we do not have the competence to delete these things, we try, but they're still there, they're still there, they're still there, they're still there. Usually what we will do is we will change the concept to fit the reality. So now I am not worthy, I don't deserve, I will never be happy, and I don't have what I want, and I can't get what I want, and I'm powerless. So now you have a lot of integrity. That's a nice pile of wood there. That's a pattern, and it's solid. I can count on that. The reality is telling me this, the mind is telling me this, the heart is telling me this. They're all agreeing, so I'm not crazy. Now, there is a need for insanity on the path to change. Meaning, if my reality sucks, meaning if I'm born in a poor black neighborhood, in a cult that tells me I'm worthless, in a cult that tells me you can't be a CEO and a millionaire, in an image that I'm not a CEO and a millionaire, and along list of proofs, like my grandmother isn't a CEO and a millionaire, her grandmother isn't a CEO and a millionaire, the neighbor's mother, their grandmother. In fact, I don't know a single black female millionaire CEO. I don't know any of them. I've never met one. I haven't seen one. Everyone's telling me it can't be done. So I don't have it. I don't believe it's possible. I don't believe it's me. And everyone doesn't believe it's me either. So we've got conformity. We've got integrity. We have sanity. No one's surprised. No one looks at that and says, this is crazy. Why isn't this black woman a CEO, rich person? This is crazy. Nobody's saying that. Everyone's saying, of course. Black women can't run companies. How do you know? Well, they don't run companies. How do you know? Well, look, there isn't a single one around running a company. It's simple, right? You've got conformity. And this creates a lot of security. It creates predictability, meaning one of the most powerful leverages of a human being as opposed to an animal is the ability to predict the future. The ability to predict the future is so potent as a power, as a resource, that more than anything else, it accounts for the ascension of the human mammal in relationship to all other creatures. Meaning, you and I don't run the fastest. Pumas, tigers, lions, they all run faster than we do. Gazelles, rabbits. I mean, give me a break. We don't run the fastest. We don't smell dogs. Any number of things can smell better than we do. We don't have boundless energy. I mean, watch a coyote run 100 miles a day, 120 miles a day, and, I'm getting tired after one block, right? We don't run the longest. We're not the tallest. We're not the biggest, a bear, a whale, any number of things. So why is it that the human mammal is ascending in this kind of large ecology of incompetence, meaning this large arena where all kinds of we can't fly. So birds can take off if there's a threat. They can fly to another country if there's a volcano. The human mammal initially couldn't fly. I mean, why is it that the human mammal has ascended? And it's the power to predict the future correctly through imagination. The human being, the Wright brothers, said, well, maybe if we build this thing like this and this thing like this, and we push it like this in this kind of weather, maybe we can learn to fly. They predicted, they created a hypothesis, and everyone said it was nuts. If God had meant human beings to fly, they would be flying. This was impossible. This was going against the will of God, the normalcy. Well, the Wright brothers didn't see it that way. Everyone around them saw it that way. They didn't see anyone flying. Everyone said they were fools. Why didn't they get a job at McDonald's? Flying a plane, tearing up, breaking up materials, wasting their lives away, becoming the laughing stock of the family. But in order to change something, you have to go insane. You have to go into dissonance with the status quo. In other words, you have to delete some of these beliefs that say, I can't do it, it can't be done, I'm worthless, it's never going to be done before, it's pointless, it's hopeless. You have to delete all that. You've still got the statistical reality. And you've got to create things like, it can be done. I can do it. This is the kind of person I am. Of course I fly planes. Never been done before, but you just wait, you just wait. So you have to go insane, meaning you have to have your mind go ahead of reality. And it has to go insane in a way that is within the framework of the current technology. Meaning the Wright brothers couldn't have invented a plane before woodworking tools or before light wing fabric was developed. So, in other words, Leonardo da Vinci had helicopter designs. but he never brought the reality ahead of his design because they didn't have motors that could produce or alloys. Like right now, as we speak in 2021, great effort is being made indoors to create a self-propelled helicopter. And of course, they didn't have motors, electric motors, or other. They didn't have electricity in Leonardo's time. And so you have to go insane in order to change anything. But you have to go insane in a way that is probable, meaning it has to be probable, but nobody knows that it's probable, or most people don't think it's probable because it's never been done before. In other words, it has to have moved from being possible to probable before changing the belief makes a difference. You know, Elon Musk reinvented the electric car and everyone told him it was impossible. It was impossible to start the company. It was impossible to keep the company afloat. The company would go bankrupt. But battery technology and motor technology and steel and aluminum technology and financial technology had reached a point where it was probable that, I mean, it wasn't highly probable. Elon said that there was a 80, 90% chance of failure, but it was probable. It was 10, 20% probable. And working with that 10%, Elon moved that slowly into 70, 80% probable. Well, in the course of going from something that was 10% probable to something that's 80% probable, Elon Musk has gone from being almost bankrupt and losing all his companies to the wealthiest person on the planet today. Because now other people believe, meaning he has taken enough steps to delete parts of the reality and show proof of concept, like nobody believed anyone would want them. Well, when you have the longest waiting list of any car company in the world, people want them. Nobody believed they could be profitable. Well, when you have better profit margins than the other OEMs, then, there's proof of concept, right? And so most people wait until something's proved because they don't want to risk. Every time you move from a reality that's sane and clearly established to a reality that is insane, where you're now thinking this and planning this and doing this, every time you move from a sane reality where everything converges to an insane reality where your mind is ahead of the reality, you have risk. Because one of two things is going to happen in this situation. Either the belief and the idea is going to collapse and converge with the reality, or with lots more work. I mean, in Elon's case, we're talking 100-hour weeks for a decade, with a lot of work and a certain amount of luck and, lots of things falling into place. What's going to happen is the reality is going to thoroughly line up with the vision. Now, a lot of us know that many of the time when we think, I'm going to lose weight, I'm fat, but I'm going to lose weight, that, this often doesn't happen, right? Here I am, I'm fat, and I'm going to lose weight, and I'm going to be healthy, and I'm going to eat well, and I'm going to do da-da-da. We've got insanity, meaning hasn't worked before, it isn't working at the moment, but it's going to work in the future. Well, many of us know that in the tension between the ambition, the goal, the new possibility, that a lot of the times my image collapses. Look at me eating pie again. I'm never going to do this. I don't think it can be done, right? I was going to lose 5 pounds this week. I weighed myself. I gained 1 pound. All my relatives, here, have another piece of pie. Don't worry about this. Don't make too, Everyone around me is pushing to reestablish the norm. Why? Because people feel comfortable when there's convergence between reality and the inner reality and the outer reality. People feel safer because there's more stability. There's more predictability, right? If I know that you're always going to be fat and you're always going to reply this way and you're always going to say this and you're never going to do that, then I can predict my reality better because you are a predictable variable. I can count on you to be exactly as you are. And it may not be particularly valuable. It may not be particularly inspiring. But at least you're not confronting me with the fear of the unknown and the fear of change, which in a traumatized culture is the highest fear. The highest fear is the fear of the unknown, which has secondary supporting fear. That's the highest fear, is the fear of the unknown. And in the unknown, being re-traumatized in a helpless state. Terror, pain, and helplessness in an overwhelming state, in a timeless state, is the epitome of hell for a human being. It is the worst possible experience. And you know what? Every time you go into the unknown, it is possible that you experience that again. The thing you never wanted to feel again, it's possible you experience that again. Because in the unknown, you don't have any control. And so you can't predict with certainty. If you leave the safety of the known to travel around the world, to hang out with a new person, to leave your current job to start, you've got a risk. Now, of course, if you're moving to a company that's rated best in the world to work for, that treats its employees well for the last 50 years, there's not that much risk relative to your own company. So the certainty of where you're going offsets that fear. But if you're quitting your job to work for yourself, you look at the statistics. Uncle Harry quit his job and tried to work for himself. He went bankrupt. Aunt May left Bill when he didn't make enough money. In fact, let me look at the statistic. 90% of all small businesses and adventures fail. I haven't done this before. I'm leaving the known to go to the unknown, which means I'm out of control. Which means it's possible that I will feel absolutely miserable and not be able to do anything about it. And I don't want that. And so the more predictability there is, the less likely there is to be a situation that feels unknown and thus out of control. And so everyone around us, so relieved when we get back to normal. For a moment there, I mean, you went off to, oh my goodness, what are you doing going to India? You know, who talks that way? What, now you've got a red dot on your forehead? I mean, what's the meaning of this? Let's just go back to the way it was before. We'll whine, we'll complain, we'll eat, we'll watch TV, and nothing needs to change. And it'll be predictable. You know, none of this, none of it. I mean, just don't make me go into the unknown, basically, because then I might lose some control. So there's pressure, and statistically speaking, in traumatized cultures that are sociopathic cultures produce trauma, which produces a traumatized culture that is sociopathic to dissociate from the trauma. If you're traumatically illiterate rather than traumatically competent, when you're traumatized in that helpless place, you disown the helpless place. You do not go back and heal the trauma, because that would require competency, that would require empathy, that would require support from the cult around you. So this is the terrain that we're in. And so all of that is to say that, you know, all humans want to meet their needs. And the question is how competent they are. Because if you're highly incompetent and lack confidence in yourself, you will not diverge your mind from your body. You'll look at the status quo. It's always been, black people are never rich, it's never fair, blah, blah, blah. Women have never been welcome in the boardroom. And you're not going to go against it because you don't have confidence in yourself to transition to a new reality. So what happens? You will then believe it can't be done. So somebody else may come looking at you and say, look, you got a strong body. You're smarter than that guy. You've got a better idea than that white man. Come on, let's start a company together. No, I'm black. I'm a woman. I'm not going to leave the known to go do that. What do you know? How do you know? It's never been done. You haven't seen me in my depression. You haven't done this, etc. So I'm not going to change, right? Now, this is by far the most pivotal moment in human history, personally and collectively and culturally, right? This moment here. Why? Because every single status quo in the history of status quos has been imperfect, has been mediocre. If it's the status quo, it's mediocre, it's average. It's not exceptional. The exceptional is never the status quo. So evolution takes place in any environment, including a human environment. Evolution takes place when the status quo moves towards being exceptional. And that requires insanity. You've got to diverge from what your outer senses are telling you. Your outer senses is telling you it can't be done, it hasn't been done, it isn't being done, it will never be done. And you've got to go crazy. You've got to believe before it's there. Now, if the reality shows up, it's easy. That's what most people will do. That's what the average person does. The average person says, those electric cars, they'll never be built, they'll never be popular. Tesla, no, it'll go bankrupt. Who cares about that? They say that, and they say that, just like the Wright brother doubters said that about human flight. They say that, and they say that, and they say that. And then one of their friends drives and says, this is actually not bad. They say, oh, well, it's not for me. It'll probably fade out. The company will go bankrupt. You'll see. Well, 5 years go by. The company isn't bankrupt. More of their friends have Teslas. NHTSA says it's one of the safest cars in the world. The electric motor trend names it Car of the Year. Maybe there's something here, right? It's a pretty easy transition, isn't it, right? The Car of the Year, the Model S was the Consumer Report's highest rated car in history. Motor Trends, the Car of the Year. The longest battery range per dollar. Pretty cool, right? So at some point it becomes easy to make the transition, right? For a fear-based person who doesn't want to risk anything, at some point, getting rid of these beliefs and just buying a Tesla becomes the new norm, right? The new norm. But then there's something else, meaning the norm. By the time something is average, it is mediocre, which means that the new thing is out in front of the pack, of the status quo. Now, the more competent you are, the more confident you are. If everything you do, you carry through and you succeed at, that's called self-confidence, right? Yeah, I get things done. I wanted to do that, I got it done. Wanted to do that, I got it done. Confidence is a function of successful competence. I drove the car 3,000 miles without any incident. And when I get in the car, am I terrified I'm going to die in the next minute? No, because I've done it before and I've done it well repeatedly. I've got confidence from experience. So there's a correlation. Now, when you are competent and confident, based on that confidence, you always create abundance. Always. So the tension where you see people sabotaging is when there is a prior self-image, a prior belief, a prior family norm, a prior cult norm, and they are now competent, meaning their competence has diverged from the norm. It looks like they would be able to diverge from the mediocre, from the average, and do something better. It looks that way. But they don't believe it. That's not me. That's not what we do in our family. That's not what my mom drilled into my head when she told me I was stupid 10,000 times. She said I was never going to amount to something. I believed her. I believe I'm never going to amount to something. I'm starting to amount to something. That's scary. I'm starting to diverge from my image. I don't know what's going on. And so when people sabotage, when people walk away from success, it's the fear of insanity. It's the fear of the unknown. Now, the most traumatized people have the greatest fear of the unknown, because every traumatized person has the exact same response to trauma as any other. I never want to feel that way again. And the strategy, the identity comes up with a plan, right? We just will not think that. We won't think anything here. We won't do that. We won't take risks. And then we won't be helpless and terrified again. We may be mediocre, but we're not going to face the fire of helpless terror again. And so I'll just wait until it's guaranteed, which is after somebody else becomes exceptional. Because when it's guaranteed, meaning when the majority can drive down and get a low-priced electric car and save money with better reviews and no education necessary, by that point it's average. It's the new norm. It's not exceptional, right? Someone else is doing something new and exceptional that no one else believes in at the moment. And so there's a correlation between abundance and competence. And in order to become more and more competent, to become exceptional, one must delete the programming of one's cult and replace it with exceptional thoughts, feelings, beliefs, paradigms, and out of that, create a more exceptional reality. Now, the more exceptional reality threatens change to everyone, which is why the majority in a traumatized and sociopathic culture always attacks the minority. You'd think that if someone was creating the safest car in the world, was moving the planet towards sustainable energy, you'd think that that would be the kind of person everyone would line up to support to help human evolution, right? But in fact, Tesla was the largest short position on Wall Street, meaning there were more wealthy people, hedge funds, billionaires, trying to make Tesla crash than there were trying to make any other company crash. Meaning more people borrowed money to try and sell Tesla stock and drive the stock to ruin than any other company in the world. Why? Because Elon was changing things more than any other company. You know, they could have easily ganged up on Ford and crashed Ford because it wasn't in as strong a position. Right? It wasn't changing the world. It was just doing the same old thing, so nobody's worried about that. People get upset when something new happens that takes them into uncertainty, which brings up the fear of the unknown, which brings up the fear of being out of control, which brings up the fear of being traumatized. And so when people line up to attack that, what they're attacking is not evolution. They are, in fact, stunting evolution, but what they're aiming at is the source of their fear. I don't want to have to think more. I don't want to have to feel more. I don't want to have to take more risk. And you're making my world differently. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to attack you. I'm going to undermine you. I'm not going to support you. And so in this crisis, we are a human mammalian species that needs people. So people that are deeply needing validation will destroy their innovation. Okay, if it's that upsetting to you, I'll go back and fail. And now everyone else will say, well, you did a good job. Don't worry about it. Here, you're one of the good old boys. Now we don't have to change our beliefs. Don't be too hard on yourself. Of course you failed. You're just a tiny idiot, trying to change the car industry. Just come back and be a historical footnote, and we all know how these things work. The good old boys gang up and punish the newcomer, and of course you lost. It's nothing to be ashamed of, and nobody's worried now. The future is going to be the same. We're going to keep polluting. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Just make us happy, right? Fail. Be miserable. Be mediocre. Do what everyone else is doing, and then we won't give you a hard time. The media won't have a field day with every little thing that goes wrong with your company, right? More Fords catch fire than Teslas, but a Tesla catches fire. Oh, a Tesla caught headline news, right? Yeah, but why aren't you reporting this? Because that's not changing. That's not new. That's not frightening people. The media is in the fear and adrenaline business because fear and adrenaline sells advertising, and the media is in the advertising business. And so anything new, we're going to try and threaten it. We're going to make it worse than it is because we'll get better ratings. That's our job. We don't care about news. We care about advertising revenue. And so we distort the truth to create more fear. We get better ratings, and we sell better ads. And we don't want that to change. We don't want to create a new model of ethics or something like that. No. We'll get rid of those reporters. We'll get rid of the best reporters that think they're trying to tell news stories. And we'll bring in people that will feed us, adrenaline-producing poppycock, unbalanced reactivity. That's what we want. That's what we've always had. That's what we're going to get, right? And don't try to rock the boat. So this is the tension around competency and abundance. Because, of course, the average in an incompetent culture, average is scarcity. I don't have enough love. I'm not a good enough parent. I'm not a good enough lover. My lover is not enamored with me. Does my lover say she's having the best orgasms of her life and mean it? Of course not. I'm in a cult that takes one cradle to grave without a single sex education class. Of course I don't know what I'm doing. I'm a cult member in a mediocre sex cult. I mean, we all have some sex at some point in our lives, and we generally do 1/10 of our potential, like everyone else, and we all are ashamed of it, and that's normal. It's wonderful. We don't know what we're doing, and we're not going to make any changes to that because that would take us into the unknown. So in a scarcity environment created largely out of the fear of the unknown and the fear of being out of control, which means the fear of innovation, education, change, and the fear of the temporary insanity. As we move from heart, mind, and body, all agree that I'm a schmuck and I'm never going to amount to anything, to my belief saying, well, maybe I could amount to something. Nah, you're not amounting to anything. Yeah, that's true, but maybe I could. Just get down, right? Don't break the pattern. Don't dissolve the cohesive identity of failure to create an unpredictable identity where I might succeed, but I might not, right? That's the unknown. That's uncertainty, right? So an infant lacks the ability to appropriately ascribe accountability to those around them. An infant does not have the psychological confidence to ascribe incompetence to the giants they depend on. Why? Well, the infant is 5 times smaller and is in a completely dependent relationship on the giant. Now, what is the psychological impact of being 5 years old and saying, oh my God, my parents are nuts. They are the single biggest threat to my dignity, to my education, to my competence, to my self-image. These guys could kill me or render my entire life a painful mediocrity. And they probably will, because they're that fucked up. And it doesn't get any better, right? Out there in the cult, most people are like that. These giants that I'm depending on do not know what they're doing. They very well may kill me or themselves, or render the life so miserable that more people commit suicide than die in car accidents in a cult obsessed with driving around at 70 miles an hour all day long. Like, that's heavy, right? 5-year-old, I'm dependent on idiots in a dysfunctional cult that doesn't know what it's doing. It's creating more and more loneliness and depression every year. My goodness. It's too heavy for a kid. So they knock those thoughts out. And what they do is they create a consistent story where this is the beautiful, wonderful God and goddess. This is the perfect mom and dad. So this doesn't make any sense, though. This is the perfect mom and dad, but I'm hurting. I'm lonely. I'm traumatized. I'm scared. I'm not doing very well. But this is the perfect mom and dad. I know. So how do we bring integrity? How do we create consistency? We leave the perfection of the parents, because if we acknowledge that they're idiots, then we'd have to take over, and we don't know how. And we acknowledge that we're a failure. And what we say is, our parents are perfect. This is the child psychology. But I'm unlovable. I'm flawed. I don't deserve. And now we have sanity, because I don't have what I need. I don't have what I want. I feel terrible. But now we have peace, right? The image matches it, because I'm unlovable, because I don't deserve, because I'm a bad person, because I deserve to be punished. And I am being punished, and I deserve to be. There's no insanity there. I know exactly what's going on. I deserve to be punished. I'm being beaten at 5 years old. Now, if we looked at psychology too deeply, we might have to say, this isn't working very well. So let's just not look at psychology, right? Let's just remain psychologically illiterate. So going through this process, we have the transmission of worthlessness. In other words, the older siblings, the bullies, the parents, the priests, the teachers, the government. Look at a SWAT team go in and stick a gun at someone's child for some minor thing because it embarrassed a politician, right? This is not how you treat your citizen with their own tax money. Here, we're going to steal your tax money or we're going to kill you. You don't want to die? You don't want to go to jail? You don't want all your stuff stolen? Okay, just give it to us. You want to give it to us, or do you want us to take it, right? Now, we're going to take it for your own good, right? And now that we've got all your money and your stuff, we're going to pass regulations, not that benefit you that benefit the people who keep us in power, because we're reptiles. We're sociopaths. And these sociopaths will give us a lot of money if we use our power to benefit them, not the people. And we need their money because you're too sociopathic to vote and learn about your country. You don't care about your country. You're not going to read a 30-item bill and carefully write a letter because you don't care. You're a sociopath. And you're electing sociopaths who are being lobbied by sociopaths who hurt you, which communicates your worthlessness, which means you feel more sociopathic, which means you blame the politician who doesn't like to be blamed, so they become more reptilian. The hurt is too much to do your very, very best for someone and be constantly jeered at and humiliated at every time as if you're not a person. You treat a politician like a sociopath, they become more sociopathic. You pass laws and regulations that traumatize your citizenry and show massive incompetence, and you will create hostility, right? So there's a sociopathic loop. It's going along nicely. Sociopathic people elect sociopathic politicians who are bribed by sociopathic lobbyists to pass sociopathic laws that hurt people, that mean that people are more sociopathic than they were before, which means they're more afraid of the unknown than before. And so we'll elect the politician that frightens you the most. If you don't do this, the whole world will fall apart. If you don't invade this country, mass destruction, right? 1 million innocent Iraqis killed because we promised war. We promised, fear. We'll transpose that onto another culture and become the very thing we say we're fighting, a weapon of mass destruction. Killing 1 million people with smart bombs is mass destruction, is terrorism. We just don't call it that because that would make us feel crazy. How can you fight a war on terror while terrifying the world? You can't. That's crazy. That's insane. But again, do you want to admit that your leaders are insane? Well, that might require personal responsibility. But I'm a bad person, so I don't want the responsibility. I'm not reliable. I'm incompetent, so I want someone else to have the power. Right? So we have this tightness here. Do you feel the headache? What's going on? Just let go, and there it is, cleared. Worthlessness is transmitted to a child by behaving worthlessly towards the child, by not being worthy of the empathy, the trust, the innocence, the vulnerability of the child. When you're not worthy of that, you are a worthless parent. But a child cannot accept that the giants they depend on for life are worthless. And so the child decides that they are worthless, that everything their parent does that is wrong, that everything that their abusive spouse that does that is wrong is their fault, and that they deserve to be punished because it's their fault. That's the consistent narrative. So now I'm being punished, and I deserve to be punished. It's my fault, and so I should be punished. I am punished, and the godlike spouse, the godlike parent is punishing me. And the only thing that would really terrify me is if I think I have some value, if I think I have some significance, if I think I'm not an evil person who deserves to be punished. That would terrify me because all this data is saying one thing, and I don't think I can bridge the gap. So I'll just delete these hopeful thoughts and go back to being abused. This is the crisis of the epidemic of worthlessness. I don't deserve to be loved, so I don't love myself. The people around me don't deserve to be loved, so they don't love themselves. They don't love themselves, so they don't love me. They don't love me because I'm worthless. I'm worthless, and so they cannot love me. And you have a loop. The loop of worthlessness, which is established by age 5, is a sanity-producing blindness, because we are all worth it. The only question is, are we competent? And at 5-year-old, none of us are. So the only question is our parents competent? And the question is, how can you ask traumatized and abused, psychologically illiterate, traumatically illiterate parents, often with compulsive addictive disorders, how can you expect them, without a single hour of parental literacy, to go from that state towards being healthy, empathic, loving human beings who know what they're doing? You can't. And how can you expect children who are in a dependent relationship until 18 to grasp the horror that they are being raised by morons in a sociopathic cult that is selling them out to the highest bidder in the lobbying community, in a cult that is shame-based and punishment-based, that if the politician tries to educate parents or stand up for children, they will just be voted out of office. In a democracy, shame always votes to hide shame. We're the greatest country in the world. Nothing's wrong here. Everything's perfect. Just vote for me, right? I will not expose our inadequacy. I will not expose our incompetence. I will not punish you for being an idiot. I'll make you feel great for being stupid. And I'll pretend that it's the other side's fault, right? There's nothing evil about being stupid in a cult that is filled with ignorance, shame, and stupidity. That's normal. That's how viruses spread from one generation to the next, and always have. The question is whether it's more intelligent to diverge from that norm or to stick with the status quo, even when we can see the long tail of misery, mediocrity, shame, and stupidity in our wake that never deserved to be punished. It never had to continue indefinitely when we now have new technologies. We could all spend 1,000 hours becoming psychologically literate. We could spend 1,000 hours becoming parentally literate. We could actually study how to be a great parent for 500 hours before becoming a parent. Well, that's unknown. What would happen? We've never done it before. You have to find out, right? But I don't want to find out. I don't want to face the unknown. This is the crisis. I'm interested in this topic, having discovered that by the time that I was 5, I knew I had no value. I knew I was unlovable. I knew I was shameful. I knew I didn't deserve love. I knew that by age 5. And so my 6-year-old did not pursue love, did not pursue empathy, did not pursue or perceive value. My 6-year-old was a frantic maniac trying to control and learn the art of manipulation. Because since I had no value, no worth, was not lovable and was not loved, Since there was no competence around me, the only way to get any sense of survival and security was to figure out how to manipulate, how to intimidate, whether it was my siblings or my parents or whatever, how to control and figure out the system. And from that moment on, I've never felt lovable. I've never felt worthy of love. I've turned away. And unloved and feeling unworthy of love, I feel angry, I feel hurt, I feel hopeless, I feel depressed, I feel exhausted. All these things I have to control and figure out. Now, I've met people who were able and willing to love me. But this was crazy. You cannot love an unlovable person. It's insane. And for a repeatedly traumatized person, I do not want to be crazy again. It was one of the most lonely places to exist as a child is the parent beating you for your own good, who lies to you and says, no, they didn't lie, that you're just making it up, who betrays you and then begs you to pretend that you're not betrayed so that they don't have to feel like an incompetent parent, who hurts you and then says, here, have a lollipop, but you have to pretend that I didn't hurt you. You willing to pretend so that I can feel like a good person? Here, have a lollipop. There we are. Aren't we a happy family? I don't want your reality to exist, and I will punish the shit out of you if you acknowledge my incompetence. But if you pretend that my abuse felt great, here, have a lollipop, and you're becoming more mature. You're the kind of person we want in this family, the person willing and able to tell lies. How can you feel worthy of dignity, of truth, of love, when the only value, the only bribes you receive are for pretending the most sacred parts of you, your innocence, your trust, your empathy, have zero value, are the enemy, and are not wanted? That's the question we have to deal with in a highly sociopathic cult. Don't tell mom. This will be our little secret. But tell the truth, or God will punish you and burn you in a pit for eternity. So you've got insanity and schizophrenia in God. You've got sociopathic behavior in the God, and in the God figure, in the parent, in the priest, who preys on deaf and blind children in boarding schools, who picks boys who are less believable around sexual abuse, and a Catholic Church that will intimidate, rotate pedophiles, right? So how can you say, I'm worthy after all of that? It makes no sense. I don't want to feel that lonely again. I don't want to feel that crazy again. I'm not worth it. That's the only thing that makes any sense. And I'm going to be abused again and again and again by a large percentage of people. So I feel sane. I feel peace, like I've gotten over it. You know, it's over with, right? Come on, hurry up and hurt me, because I'm starting to feel crazy. You're nice to me. Why are you nice to me? I'm not worthy of love. And so, as I've been looking at this face, As I've been looking at this face in my partners, this is not personal. It's very important to understand this is cultural. It has nothing to do with you at some level at all. It has nothing to do with your parents at some level at all. It's a cultural virus that is passed down intergenerationally with great precision in a cult that hides its shadow, in a cult that doesn't want to look at the percentage of incest, at the percentage of trauma, at the percentage of humiliation, at the percentage of shame, at the percentage of addiction, the percentage of suicide, at the much higher percentage of people who think about suicide. Those are cult memes. They're not personal anything. They're just what was given from the past to the present. And there's a tremendous defense system in every cult around all things that question and change the cult. Because the cult's primary job is not to be intelligent. It is to protect its citizen from the fear of the unknown by creating a norm that does not overwhelm the average person on the average day. Because the average abused child is abused every day, and it would upset them to suddenly find, well, what did I do differently? I didn't do anything. Why were you nice to me today? You didn't put me down in public. You didn't automatically pass over my promotion for someone with another skin color. What's going on? Why is the cult changing? The feeling of worthiness doesn't come back to that 5-year-old, that 4-year-old, until an adult, a single adult, capable of secure attachment and love, goes back into the body memories and rewrites the code, rewrites time, changes the fundamental beliefs of unlovability, unworthiness, and lets that 5-year-old understand they never did anything wrong. They're not unlovable. They're just in a cult that so far has showed a profound reluctance to love the parts of them that need the most love, the parts of them that threaten the status quo with healing, with beauty, with truth, with goodness, with evolution. Love your 5-year-old. Find his and her wound, and understand that you will never be useful to healing the virus of unworthiness that is a pandemic in almost every Western relationship I've had. It was shocking to go to a place like Thailand and actually find people who felt worthy of their feelings. Shocking. What's going on here? Why are people proud to have feelings? It's a global virus around the world, but it is particularly deep in Western cults, and it is particularly deep in America, where your value is reduced to your money, to how much you make people look good around you, to how famous you are, and to how often you win at doing things that may be profoundly destructive to you, your family, your culture, and your species, because the games have not evolved. To win many of our cult games is to lose at life. But that would involve change in thinking and feeling and speaking and doing, and that would involve cultural evolution and confronting the fear of the unknown, which to someone who is unlovable and traumatized is the worst nightmare that they can imagine. Love your 5-year-old. They didn't do anything wrong. They never did. And they are waiting for one adult, one competent human being, to provide a secure, stable attachment in a cult that says it can't be done, that says it's hopeless. It says the only value is if you're a good and loyal cult member and keep the secrets and the shadow of the cult hidden from view. I'm excited today to have made some headway in this sensitive and delicate area with both myself and my wife. Usually we will attract people with similar issues, and so sometimes when you help the other, you can help yourself. When you help yourself, you can help the other. Viruses are not personal. They're just statements at the current state of cultural evolution. And there's always something 10 times better on the other side of the unknown, once we have the courage and the competence to risk it, to find it, and to hone it. Hi, I'm Dane Rose. All knowledge begins with a paradigm, and out of that paradigm comes an idea, an awareness that we adopt, reject, or synthesize into something better. It doesn't become wisdom, it doesn't become useful until we take action, until we integrate it into not only our thoughts, but our feelings, our body, our words, and our way of being. For that to occur, we have to move from the passive media paradigm into more active engagement. In the link below, in the More Information section, is an invitation to join a very small, deliberately filtered, high-quality discussion with a group of people who share a common language and want to work with these ideas, with me and with one another, with the sole goal of creating 10 times more sustainable well-being for ourselves and those around us per unit of energy invested. Thank you for watching.